Day Faculty Development Program on Recent Trends in Photonics. So now I request Dr. Preeta Sharan to introduce the speaker.
Okay. Thank you very much, Puspin. Now I welcome to all the participants who are taking a lot of interest in listening this 5 days FDP on recent trend in photonics. So I'm happy to read Srinivas sir biodata. So currently Dr. T. Srinivas, he is working as professor in Department of ECE, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He completed his BSc Honours in Physics from New Science College, Hyderabad, and ME Integrated and PhD from IISc. He was a postdoctorate research fellow at Toyohashi University of Technology, Japan during 1992 to 1996. His area of research interest is optical communication, in particular photonic integrated circuit. He published about 150 papers and guided 28 PhD students. He is a member of National Board of Accreditation (NBA). He was the chairman of GATE IISc Zone during 2010 to 2013. He is an active volunteer of IEEE Bangalore section and was the chair of IEEE Photonic Society, IEEE Communication Society, Bangalore chapter. So I welcome you, sir. Now over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for introducing. And also I'll thank the organizers for calling me to this FDP. I'm very happy to participate in this. I know I have seen your schedule. A lot of good talks are there. I hope the participants will benefit and will learn more and more about photonics. And I hope some of you will pick up some topics. If someone wants to do a project or research, this is a very good opportunity for you to take up. So please show interest, pick up some points, whichever you may be interesting. And of course, within short period, you may not be able to learn everything, but I hope later on you can go to the references, current literature, and you can learn further. So in this talk, I'll give an overview of photonic integrated circuits. That is my topic. Okay, let me see the slides. Let them share the slides. Then I will proceed further. As you know, I will request the organizers to share my slides.
Sunita, you make me presenter. You make me allow me to share the slide now. Sunita?
You can share your screen. Yes, ma'am, you can share your screen. I stop sharing.
No,
yes.
Dr. Preeta Sharan said she will share.
Yes.
Because we have tested on her system.
Yeah, it came.
So you can make it full screen.
It is full screen.
Is that so? Fine then. I will go according to that, and I'll be prompting once in a while to go to the next screen. Okay. Yes. So the topic that I have chosen or my of interest here is the photonic integrated circuits. Of course, first few slides I'll spend slightly more time because of introductory nature. Then we'll go faster. Okay. So who is sharing? Dr. Preeta Sharan is sharing, I think. Is it not? So fine. So as you know, photonics is the science and technology of using light for various applications, starting for optical communications, sensors, computing. These are all the various applications you can think of. And recently, as you know, a lot of importance for photonics has come mainly because of the fiber optics. All our broadband communications and all are due to the fiber optic communications. But there are a lot of other new applications. In particular, sensors have become important, optical sensors, then biomedical applications. Then recently, as you know, quantum communications has become important. So in the quantum, the photonics will play an important role. You can say if you want to do some quantum computing or quantum communications, you have to implement it using photonics. The other techniques are not very suitable. So, of course, you must have already had some introduction to photonics in the first 2 sessions in the morning. Let us, please wait, Dr. Preeta Sharan. I'll let you know in a minute. So whenever it is needed, maybe some other protocol we should have so that I'll tell you when to switch. Okay, let us get going. Please be in the previous slide in the photonics introduction. Yes, let us spend some time here, or even before one. The previous one will contain the outline of my presentation, the various things that I would like to present. So we'll mostly concentrate on some examples, some specific devices and some examples and a lot of applications. So I have put applications to optical communications and so on and so forth. So this particular slide, you will see a very crude, very elementary or very tentative definition about photonics. This is the first slide, outline slide, where I have said I will mention about passive components, functional components, active components, and I will also include a little bit of our research that we are doing in our lab also. These are the topics which we are working. So we have recently we have submitted a few theses on micro ring resonators, photonic bandgap structures, and MOEMs. And recently, as I mentioned, biophotonics and quantum communications, all through photonic devices. The technologies that we use are silicon is the most popular technology, silicon photonics. Then active or dynamic materials also are important, which have got electro-optic effect and all those things. Some of those I will address in this talk also. Let us go to the next slide. So the first slide, next one. Yes, this slide will show you, will mention about what is photonics. You can say I have put it in terms of information operations. In communications, we do all these information operations. You are given an information to communicate or transmit from one point to the other, and you will have to deal with all these things. So what you usually do is you convert this information onto an electronic form. You modulate a light, you modulate a carrier, electromagnetic wave or whatever, current or signal carriers, you impress on them this information, and then you will deal with that. So you will have to do all these operations. You have to generate the signals, you have to control the signals, you have to transmit from one point to the other. You will do a lot of signal processing. You will have to display this information and so on and so forth. These are all the things that we do in electronics. And we can say that these things are possible in photonics also. I have not put here the storage. You have to store the information in optical form, which is slightly difficult at this moment. And what are the advantages that we are getting? If you want to compare with electronics, you can say that the electronics has developed very much due to developments in VLSI, but they have the limitations. They have a certain mass and they have a certain charge, and you use Fermi-Dirac statistics to study the properties of electronics. And in contrast to that, we use Bose-Einstein statistics to study the properties of light waves. So as you know, the photons have got very low mass, zero rest mass you call it, and then no charge. And of course, a lot of other properties. Depending on the technology and requirements and phenomena, etc., you invoke those properties like spin or charm or chrome, etc., etc. A lot of properties are there, fundamental particles. Okay, let us get going. Next slide, please. Just a minute, please. Hello. Yeah, so I will not spend much time on the other parts. Let us get into the integrated, photonic integrated circuits. That is the topic of our discussion today. So we'll get into that. We'll have a lot of discussion in the end if there is time. I'll take more than 1 hour, that 1 hour 15 minutes or so, and then we'll have a lot of discussion depending on the time. So you can say that integrated optics is analogous to integrated electronics. In olden days, in electronics, we used to build all these components and all the systems. If you want to make some system, you build on a breadboard or a PCB and so on. So that has got converted into VLSI now. All these things we can make on a small chip, and all these things are very, very small, like your cell phones, laptop, etc., will contain electronic chips which do a lot of functions like storage or communication or whatever you like. So in comparison with that, we can say that integrated optics aims to create various optical components for a given system on a small substrate. So that is the objective. We may not have achieved everything right now, and we may not want also like electronics. I'll give a simple example. If you want to make a Fourier transform, we can simply make a lens on a chip, and it can easily make the Fourier transform of the image. In electronics, you have a very complicated process to do this Fourier transform. You have to make hundreds of thousands of transistors, or CMOS elements, lot of memory and all those things to do. And also you have your algorithms, signal processing algorithms to do the Fourier transform. Whereas in optics, you know that you can do in a very easy way by using a lens. So that is the idea. You must do what is called this functional integration. What is the function necessary and how to achieve it is what we have to consider. Something like ASICs. In the olden days or even now, we talk about ASICs. They will only perform certain necessary functions. So we can say that integrated optics can be worked out like that. It's also possible to do some general purpose integrated optical circuits, but that's not how electronics also developed. Okay, a lot of examples are there of integrated optical circuits. We have N by N switch arrays now, and we have chips, entire chips for the fiber optic. DCFOG is fiber optic gyroscope chip. I will describe, which we have made in our lab. Then more recently, at the turn of the century, people have thought about integrating mechanical elements also. This is called optical MEMS. You can make all the optical components necessary, like an optical bench. Also, you can make on a chip. That's what people have attempted, and I'll show you a few points in that. So this is the definition or the purpose of integrated optics, to make as many components as possible on a small chip. Let us get to the next slide, please. Dr. Preetha Sharan, next slide, please. Hello.
Yeah, I have done next slide.
Yeah. I think it may be taking some time to switch from the previous slide to this. Okay. So I'm giving a small example of a typical photonic integrated circuit. This is one of the most common elements needed in communications. It is called an optical modulator. Suppose you want to generate a high-speed light wave with high-speed modulation. Suppose you want 10 Gbps signal. If you want to put it on a light wave, how do you modulate? Is an important question. So we can use. This is actually a commercial one also. Nowadays, commercial lithium niobate modulators also are available. So this is called the crystal. The material is called the lithium niobate. Okay. So it has got an interferometer. See, the structure that you see is called an interferometer. So it has got an input port, it has got an output port, the two arms of the interferometer, and on both the arms of the interferometer, you have some electrodes to put your signal and all that. So when you apply voltages on these electrodes, the double lines that you see are all waveguides. I'll tell you about the waveguides in a minute. There's also the inset here. You see, you take a piece of lithium niobate crystal and diffuse titanium into this. So wherever you diffuse titanium, the refractive index increases, and they will form as a waveguides. So this, whatever structure that you are seeing, is Maxon interferometer made of waveguides. Okay, so it has got a Y branch, it has got a combiner, two arms, and on the arms of the interferometer, we are putting the voltage at high speed. See, at this is whatever I'm showing is only lumped element configuration. It will not go for a very high speed, but this will illustrate the principle how it works. So when you apply voltage on this, due to the electric field, the refractive index changes. That is what is called the electro-optic effect. And when you pass the light through this, the light will encounter the change in the refractive index, and so the propagation constant will change, and so the phase will change. Phase of the light wave propagating in the crystal will change. And so when you are phase changing, you can say that you are effectively modulating. And due to this interferometer, you are converting the amplitude modulation into phase modulation into amplitude modulation. You can say that, you see, most of you know that e to the power of I omega t minus beta set is the propagation factor, is it not? So if you change the propagation constant, you are doing the phase modulation, basically. That's how it works, and it has got very good properties, like the high bandwidth, then very low voltage operations, very small size, and so on and so forth. These are all the various characteristics of a lithium niobate modulator. This is called an external modulator. So this, you see, just for contrast, I would mention that we will use direct modulation of a laser diode. In practice, for low frequencies and up to a few gigahertz, we use the direct modulation of a laser diode. You can modulate the injection current like in other transistor circuits, and you can get a light output which is modulated. Okay, that's how it is done, but that cannot go for very high frequencies, and it has got some problems like chirping and all that. Whereas this external modulation is a very clean, simple way of modulation, and a lot of possibilities are there. You can extend and do a lot of things. Okay, the next device that you are seeing now is called the directional coupler. There are two waveguides which are very, very close together. And when you pass the light through one of these ports, you can get the light at the output ports. The light can come out of the first port or second port, depending on the voltage that you apply. For example, when there's no voltage applied, the input signal can cross over into the second port. And when a voltage is applied on this, due to the electro-optic effect, the refractive index changes. And so effectively, you can make the light to switch back into the bar state. So if there is another signal here, the signals can be exchanged without applying any voltage. That is cross state. And when you apply voltage, they can go back to the bar state. You can have cross state or bar state of this. You can do optical switching. If you are doing optical networks, etc., then you can do optical switches by using this lithium niobate directional coupler switches. So in this inset, you will see the properties, cross section, the diffuse waveguides, and all those things. Typically, the dimensions are 4 microns in width, 2 microns in depth, and operating voltages typically at communication wavelengths. Then you will have to diffuse titanium for some 8 hours, very thin layer of titanium, 200 angstroms or so, to get a very good. See, we need only 1% of change in the refractive index. Delta n can be only 1% if you want to have a good waveguides. And the change in the refractive index due to electro-optic effect can also be very, very small. Even 0.1% change is sufficient to make a good modulator. That is the typical values. Okay, so we'll have to diffuse for about 8 hours or so at 1000 degrees centigrade if you want to make these. Lithography, of course, is needed. If you must make lithography. I'm not focusing on the technology part in this lecture, but you can think of lithography. If you want to make these devices, we should make a mask of this pattern where you can diffuse titanium into this waveguide region. Then you have to have an alignment for making these electrodes. All those problems are there. That is, of course, not difficult. That VLSI technology is well developed, and similar technology can be used for these things also. And of course, if you have newer materials, like if you want to coat some other material on top of the silicon or lithium niobate, you can do sputtering and all these other techniques. So that we will not worry right now, but we will focus on the principles. Okay, let us go to another slide. So these are all the various features of photonic integrated circuits. So most of the devices are based on the single mode operation, like in fiber optics. In fiber optics nowadays, everything is single mode, except for some sensor applications. All the communication goes on in single mode because you want to avoid dispersion. Similarly, even though you are not worried about the dispersion in integrated optics, we want in a single mode because they are small and you can manipulate the light, you can design, all those things are possible. And of course, we definitely want small structures, and so single mode is a very good way to use. Okay, then all the alignment problems are solved. If you want to connect a waveguide with a modulator or a polarizer or something in the conventional on an optical bench, it's a very big task. Whereas here, by proper lithography, you can align very automatically. So that alignment problems are solved. And just now we have seen that you can control the light propagating. You can switch between different ports. You can change the refractive index, all these things if you are on the waveguides. If the light is propagating in an optical fiber, we cannot change much. If it is propagating in a free space between the lens and a mirror or something, it is very, very impossible to control. Okay, so it's a very good way to control these light propagating in optical waveguides. And of course, because all these dimensions are small, the capacitive effects and all those things are very small. So the control is easier, and it can require only low operating voltages. You don't need high voltages. So operation also is faster because electrodes are shorter, then the capacitive effects are small and all that. Other important advantage that I have put here is the power density is very high, optical power density. Even if you launch a small milliwatt or microwatt of power, the optical power density is very, very high inside the waveguides. And so you have new effects if you want to use nonlinear effects, etc. This is a very good way to do that. In fiber optics also, the intensities are very high, the power intensities, because the small dimensions. But here they are still smaller, and all those electro-optic effects, nonlinear effects are there in the crystals, not the fibers. So this is a very good way to use these new devices can be invented by using these integrated optical devices. And of course, like in VLSI, you have very small size, lightweight. You can do the batch production. All these things can be done. Let us go to one more slide. No, this is the previous one. Next one. Next one, please. Yeah, very quickly, history. You see, you know that modern optics has started with invention of laser, 1960. Then, of course, simultaneously, all the applications have started. People from the microwave domain, they have started with optical waveguide theory. Same electromagnetic principles, you can apply it to dielectric waveguides, and you can find out what are the modes of operation and so on. And they have said that you can make small devices on the glass or other material, crystals and other materials. In 16th, of course, fiber optics also has developed on the same lines. Then, of course, in the 70s, you have a lot of development in semiconductor industry, and you had a lot of optoelectronic devices like lasers, LEDs, pin diodes, photo detectors, and so on and so forth. There also, these principles have been extended. So all these principles have been extended to optoelectronic devices. For example, lasers are made on the waveguides instead of simply bulk cavities. Then, of course, in the 90s, a lot of networking has come. As you know, due to the internet explosion, people said we'll do optical networking, and the techniques of WDM have developed. Instead of using FDM or TDM, people have started using what is called this wavelength division multiplexing. That means you can launch several signals into a single optical fiber and you can transmit. See, instead of sending only one channel, you can send multi-channels by using WDM techniques. So you need a lot of components for WDM, like wavelength. You must be able to separate out these switch, all these channels. You must be able to multiplex all of them. These are all the things that you can think of using integrated optics. And of course, now a lot of emphasis is there on all optical components. You reduce or eliminate electrons as much as possible so that you get a lot of benefits. For example, in a communication link, if there is a repeater, then if you do, people usually, typically now, presently, what is happening is you do optical to electrical conversion, do all the signal processing and detection and all the operations, and then retransmit. So if there is an electronics in between, that is happening to be a bottleneck. So the speed is limited. The data rates and all those things are limited if you are using electronics at the repeater. So in many functions like optical switching, routing, multiplexing, etc., you can do without converting it to electrical domain. That is the advantage of using these all optical techniques. So as much as possible in the optical domain is one of the guidelines of the technology. So to start with, optical waveguides are basic to integrated optics. They are like wires or interconnects in electronics. Okay, so you can also make a lot of passive devices like Y branches, tapers, couplers, etc. by using these waveguides. Then you can also make a lot of devices based on the electro-optic effect, acousto-optic effect, magneto-optic effect, nonlinear optical effects, etc. Like modulators, switches, and all these are all called the dynamic devices, where you can have some external control with electrical. You can have in other ways also, but right now I'm saying that you can control all these devices by applying some voltages and inducing some fields, either magnetic field or electric field or heat or whatever you like. And of course, you can also use electronic effects. You can create junctions. See, of course, you will have to have materials which have got these properties. Suppose you want to do lasers, for example, you need to have a direct band gap material like gallium arsenide or indium phosphide. You cannot do it on a glass or lithium niobate or some other crystal. So we have to choose materials appropriately. But it is possible to use optoelectronic effects. You can inject carriers into these devices and you can control their properties. Not only the propagation properties, absorption properties, phase shifting properties, all can be controlled by electronic means also. That's where electronics plays a role in these devices. But of course, there is limitation for everything. There's advantage as well as disadvantage. Finally, of course, the technology is important. How do you fabricate? How do you measure? How do you patent? How do you commercialize the devices? How do you deploy them? How what is their performance. These are all the important aspects when you talk about the engineering of integrated optics. Okay, let us go ahead. So these are all the various types of waveguides that you will come across in practice. These are all the cross sections that you are seeing. The first one is called the buried type of waveguide. So you diffuse some material into the substrate like glass or lithium niobate. You get higher refractive index in one region and lower refractive index outside, and light can propagate in that. So the basic principle, as you know, like in fiber optics, is that light, you can say that light propagates by multiple total internal reflections. When you launch light into the input of the waveguide, because there is a higher refractive index, you can say that it will reflect totally. But that is only a partial picture. That is not fully correct. When you talk about single mode devices and also devices which have got different shapes, you have to talk about the refractive index profile. What is the refractive index in different regions is an important thing. And correspondingly, you have to solve the wave equation. As you know, light is an electromagnetic wave. You can reduce this to wave equation and you can study how the light propagates. So you will have to solve the wave equation corresponding to all these boundary conditions and all that, and find out what are the modes of the waveguide. Modes of the waveguide, and mode is nothing but a pattern of electric and magnetic fields which can be supported in that. And its important characteristics is the propagation constant. The mode field profile and the propagation constant will define the modes. There are many types of modes that can propagate. You know about the TE modes, TM modes, hybrid modes, and so on. These are all possible in optical waveguides, but we will not go into all these mathematics and details right now. But you should realize that we have to solve all these mathematics if you want to design all these things. Of course, nowadays there are a lot of software tools are there. There are a lot of software tools are there for the design. But if you want to understand, you have to solve yourself some simpler configurations. Like this is called a channel waveguide. Whatever you are seeing is called the channel waveguide. And then, of course, the other type of waveguide is a ridge waveguide. You can coat another material on top of the substrate and then etch out unnecessary portions. You get a ridge waveguide. This is like a trapezoidal ridge waveguide. Okay. Similarly, you can load the substrate with some other medium. You see, there is a uniform slab of some refractive index. On top of that, you coat another dielectric layer. So this constitutes a loaded waveguide. Similarly, you have induced waveguides. Earlier, what we saw, when you apply voltages, you get a refractive index change. So you can make waveguides based on the voltage induced type also. So there are different types of waveguides are there, depending on the technology, depending on the requirement. You can constitute different. Just for example, I have given you a few waveguides like buried waveguides, ridge waveguides, induced waveguides. These are all common types of waveguides. Okay. So basically we have to solve the wave equation and solve the mode for the modes. It's propagation constant. You have to plot whether that mode is possible, whether any strange features are there. All those things we should make use. So that is the crux of the design in the optical waveguides. Okay. Let's go to the next one. So this is a technology chart. Only one chart I have put. On the x-axis, you have the various types of materials that you will come across in the integrated optics like glass, silicon, lithium niobate, then the 3-5 materials, magnetic materials. These are all possible. And on the y-axis, you have different fabrication techniques. You have to deposit material on top of that by different techniques like thermal evaporation or vacuum or sputtering or CVD, polymerizing. These are all the various ways in which you will deposit. Then, of course, you can also diffuse something into the substrate. You can do the ion exchange. If it is a semiconductor type of materials, you can do grow layers by epitaxial growth, LP, EVP. These are all the various technologies. And some of them are well established. Some of them are have to be improved. Some of them have to be, we cannot use electronic techniques sometimes. So these are all the problems. Or of course, it's not a way. Nowadays, of course, you can do them. In India also, some fabrication can be done depending on the devices and application, etc. You can do technology also. And in the very simpler cases in the classwork also, if you want to do, you can do very elementary ones like glass waveguides, etc. can be done in your college also. There is no problem. But not sophisticated ones. You require very good clean rooms and advanced equipment and infrastructure if you want to work on all these new technologies. Like VLSI. We cannot do a chip directly in our lab. Of course, nowadays there are a lot of commercial foundries If you have a good design, if you want to do something, you can check up what that foundry can do, and you can send them to fabricate theirs. Okay. Let us go to some devices. These are all the passive devices I am showing you, like power dividers, polarizers, mux, demuxes, gratings, lenses. All these things can be done on a chip. So passive devices means you don't have extra control. They simply light propagates and the device functions. For example, polarization, rotation. Suppose you pass TE mode and you want to get TM mode. That's a passive device. You need not do anything. If you want to do control, polarization control, then of course, if you want to get 45 degrees or 30 degrees according to some control, then it can be called as polarization control. That's not passive. That can be called as dynamic. I'll show you some examples right now. Let us go. No, there's a previous one. Yes, these are some of the power dividers that you will come across. These are all the top views that you are seeing. There's an input waveguide. There are many output waveguides like 2-port, 3-port, 6, 4-port, etc. So you can see you can just observe the first picture. First part A, symmetric 2-branch. So you have an input port. It gradually tapers into 2 ports and then branches out. So there is a small angle theta. Usually theta is very small. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the refractive index difference is very small, of the order of 1%. So angles also are very small. That's what I can mention right now. If you design, you will know. But I can mention that the angles are also very small. So these devices are very thin and long, but still you can do the power division. This is a very difficult problem in fiber optics. You just have to realize that it is very difficult to power divide in fiber optics. You have to fuse 2 fibers, and 50-50 power division is not guaranteed even then. It depends on the skill of the experimenter and all those things. Here, by proper lithography, you can easily get 150-50, 1/2 power divider. Similarly, you can make 1/3, 1/4. You can cascade and all that. These are all the various power dividers that are required in many applications like networks and so on and so forth. Let us go to another slide. You're not able to, yeah, that's fine. So we have talked about directional couplers in the beginning. When there are 2 or more waveguides very close together, light can exchange between them. So even though there is a lower refractive index in between the waveguides, the light can tunnel. This is a very strange thing compared to what we said in the beginning. In the beginning, we said that light propagates by multiple total internal reflections. But if the waveguides are put close together, light can tunnel. So you cannot explain that using total internal reflection. You have to go for the wave theory, or I can give you an analogy. See, in electronics, you know about the tunnel diode. The electrons can tunnel across the regions, even though there is a potential barrier. Exactly similarly, the light can tunnel across these waveguides. Okay, so light can, and you can get whatever ratio you want. For example, you can exchange the light completely. You can get 50% or 90% or whatever you like. And also there is what is called, this is a special case. The middle one is a special case called interferometric coupler. So it's like a coupler with 0 gap, something like that. So it has got a very strange properties. And also you can observe that the width is double there compared to input and output. So there will be 2 modes propagating there. So there's interaction between the first mode, second mode, and there will be some power exchange. So that's a very interesting thing to study. So of course you can also make 3-port, 3 waveguide, 4 waveguide, multi-port couplers, and so on by using the, of course there is a good theory for all these things. So that you need not worry right now. Okay, those are couplers. Let us go to another slide. Next one, please. Yes, star couplers are needed in many applications, in communications and other places. You have to divide the power across many output ports, and it's not a very easy task, as we mentioned in the beginning. So there is a mixing region in this. You take a glass piece or some lithium beta or one such piece. There is a broad mixing region, and it has got many branches, input and output branches. You launch light from one of the input ports, and you can get equal power at the output ports. That's a challenge. You have to design such that power is equal at all the output ports. So this can be transmittive type. First one is called the transmission type. Second one is called the reflection type. Okay. Yes, let's get going. Next one, please. So polarization is an important thing in optics. As you know, light is a vector wave. It has got horizontal polarization, vertical polarization, etc. Or in other words, you also have 6 components of electric and magnetic fields: Ex, Ey, Ez, Hx, Hy, Hz. All are important. We cannot say some of them are not there. Okay. So polarization is an important problem in optics and integrated optics. So you can control the polarization by using these devices. For example, most often you will require anisotropic materials. Anisotropic materials are where you have double refraction. If you put the anisotropic crystal on a paper, you will see 2 images. That is called the double refraction. That is due to the double refraction, which technically it means that light is propagating in different directions with different velocities. So you have all these polarization effects. So in the simplest case, in the case which I am showing, if you have a TE and TM polarization passing through the waveguide, you want to get only TE mode out. So you coat a thin layer of optical anisotropic material and you can achieve this TE polarization or TM polarization, whatever you like. So typical materials are calcite. Lithium niobate itself is a anisotropic material. And you know that you have ordinary index and extraordinary index, 2 different refractive indices for all these anisotropic medium. Okay, you can make polarizers. You can control what polarization you get at the output. Let's go to another slide, please. Yes, this is the example of a mux demux. I have just chosen some examples. There are a lot of examples are there, a lot of devices are there in practice. So this is an example of a mux demux. So what you are seeing is an optical fiber is bringing in 4 channels and you have to separate them out at the output ports. So here, those lines that you are seeing are gratings. They are put across the, see, there is a waveguide, of course, like fiber is launching the light into a waveguide, and across the waveguide, we have put all those 3 gratings. So the first grating will deflect the light in one direction of wavelength λ1. Second grating will deflect, and all other wavelengths are passing through. The second grating will deflect the wavelength λ2. Third one will deflect the λ3. So you can get the output at different wavelengths. So you can demultiplex these channels or these light wavelengths using such a grating type of device. So you can also have a reflection type of grating devices to do the similar function. So there will be a lot of details in this. There are a lot of, maybe I'll show you 1 or 2 in our work also. Okay. So mux demux is an important component you can do on a chip. Let's go one more. Lenses are traditionally very important in optics. They can do many functions like focusing. Then you can beam shaping, expansion. All those things can be done by the lenses. So in here, what you are seeing is a broadband beam is coming in, and it is focusing in one particular point. So how do you achieve this lensing action is an important question. So basically, what you have to do is you have to control the refractive index. So whatever you are seeing that patches are high and low refractive indices. In a certain pattern, I will create the refractive index across the beam. And the phase shift from each of these regions will make the light to converge at this point. It is like a graded refractive index. So this is also called graded index type of lens. Similarly, you can also make thickness varying. You can vary the thickness or width. I mean, not exactly thickness. The width of this region, each of these region is varied in the second example. And once again, you can make lenses. These are called the Fresnel lenses. So there's a lot of good theory about the Fresnel diffraction and so on and so forth. You can use, you can study those if you want to learn more about how light propagates, how it diffracts, how it makes interference patterns and all that. One more. So gratings are one of the very important elements in integrated optics. They can be used for different purposes like input-output coupling. Suppose you want to couple light out of the chip or launch from a fiber onto a chip, or if you want to couple 2 waveguides. And we have already seen the example of a deflection by grating. You can also do the mode conversion. You are seeing in the item E is mode conversion from fundamental mode to next mode. They are also used for laser reflectors. You put a grating on both sides, they will act as mirrors and light will reflect. You can make a cavity, waveguide cavity. Similarly, you can make filters because all these gratings are frequency dependent. You can make filters. Some frequency can be passed through, some frequency can be deflected, and so on and so forth. So you can make wavelength filters by using the gratings. So there are many applications like this. Let's go to one more slide. Next slide. So this is one of the commercial devices called arrayed waveguide grating. So it has got, see, it works on the principle of phase shift across the different elements. These curved ones, what you are seeing, are waveguides with a different lengths. You see that the waveguides are of different lengths. Let me say L1, L2, L3, L4, etc. All different wavelengths. So you will have several input waveguides and several output waveguides, and there are two mixing regions where the light will mix up, and it is uniformly distributed across the input of these curved waveguide sections. So because the waveguides are different lengths, the phase shift is different. So you can superpose all these waves at the output port at once and see what is the phase shift. This is like your antenna arrays. Many of you have studied antennas. If you have an array of antennas with progressive phase shift, you can do the beam forming in some particular direction. Similarly, at any particular output port, you can get whatever wavelength you want. You can design such that you can get like that. So you can split up all these channels using these waveguides. Once again, this is like a demultiplexing operation, but generally this is a very multi-purpose device. You can do many functions using these arrayed waveguide gratings. This is one of the commercial devices available on silicon, and of course passive. There's not much control in all these things. You just have to, like a filter or a mux demux. Okay, let's go. Next one, please. So let us look at some dynamic devices. So dynamic devices means you have to control the device. You have to change the refractive index. You can change the direction of propagation or reflection properties or whatever properties you can change by external means. So you can use heat. You can heat the waveguide and change the refractive index. You can apply electric field and you can change the refractive index. Similarly, you can also apply stress or acoustic field. You can also apply magnetic field. You can the nonlinear effects will involve the field of the light wave itself, because light wave itself has got electric and magnetic fields. They can control themselves also in nonlinear effects. Okay. Yes, please. So this is an example of a thermo-optic device. So what you see is an interferometer like what you saw in the beginning, but here the electrodes are heating elements. The black ones, what you are seeing, are heaters. You can apply voltage, not small voltage, but somewhat sufficiently enough voltage so that the device heats up. So, and even glass for that matter, in this example, I'm showing you soda lime glass. On top of that, you make waveguides by potassium ion exchange, and you can apply titanium film electrodes, and you can get a heat. You can heat the waveguide and then change the phase shift. So these are all called thermo-optic devices. You can also do on-off switching. So many things can be done by using thermal control. Let's go to one more. So we have already touched upon electro-optic effect earlier. So these are electro-optic modulators. I will let us see the second one. Second one is a high-speed modulator where you can apply long electrodes on top of this waveguide, and you can, when you apply high frequencies, signals of very high frequency of the microwave range, then the electric fields form a standing wave pattern on these electrodes. And so there's a complicated interaction between the light wave and the microwave. So this is an example of a optical and microwave interaction. You can combine light waves, microwaves, and you can go for high speed modulation. You can go for 100 Gbps or 160 Gbps using these optical microwave techniques. But it is based on the electro-optic effect. Let us go one more, please. So these are all various other dynamic devices, like you can make optical switches. These are two electrodes, split electrode configuration. There are many variations of this. Okay, but this time I have put these things on the directional coupler instead of interferometers. Okay, let us move further. So acoustoptic effect is based on the induction of stress field in the crystal. You make what is called an IDT pattern. See the bottom one, what you see is an interdigitated electrode. You have alternating plus and minus voltages. You apply to the electrodes, and you have a high and low electric field, and so high and low refractive index. So you can say that it is forming a grating along the propagation path. This is forming a grating along a propagation path. In the first example, that blackish patch, what you see is the stress-induced grating. So when light is incident on that region, then it can get deflected depending on the grating pitch and so on, and all the properties. It can get deflected. So this is called acousto-optic effect. The refractive index of the body or the material changes with applied stress field. So a lot of applications are there. If you want to do signal processing in the optical domain, then you can do using acousto-optic effect. You can signal as one port, light as the modulated light as the another input signal. You can correlation between these two, and all those things can be worked out. Let us go to one more. Next one, please. Hello. Yes, this shows some magneto-optic devices. Magneto-optic means you have to apply magnetic field, and as I mentioned in the beginning, in the earlier sometime, you have to have polarizing with respect to polarizers. Here you need to have anisotropic materials and magnetic materials. Many times all these dielectric materials and the semiconductor materials, what you are observing, are all non-magnetic. Now you should think of some magnetic materials. A lot of magnetic materials are there. If you apply magnetic field, you can change the properties. Similarly, you can also change the refractive index if you apply magnetic field. Those are all called magneto-optic devices and magneto-optic effect. So typically these are anisotropic materials. Like for example, I am showing you YIG, yttrium iron garnet, or yttrium aluminum garnet. These are all the materials which can be used to form magneto-optic devices. You can also have magnetic waveguides also. You can confine the magnetic field to certain regions and talk about magnetic waveguides. Magneto-optic waveguides also you can call them. Light can propagate and magnetic field also can propagate. So you can make more and more complicated devices by using these acousto-optic effect, magneto-optic effect, etc. Let us go further. Yes, please. So this is an example. I'm jumping to nonlinear optical effects. So it's a very big subject. You can use the nonlinear optical properties to generate, for example, new frequencies. In this example, I am showing you light is launched at a frequency of 840 nanometers. And you can get the light at 420 nanometers due to nonlinear effects. This is not a laser. Okay. So in the laser, there's a cavity and lights they resonate and so on and so forth, and you get whatever frequency you want. Here it is not like that. Due to nonlinearity, you can generate second harmonic. So that is a basic. Of course, if you go down to atomic level, there is a resonance again. The electrons are responding to certain frequency, and they are resonating at double the frequency and all that, and then you are generating this harmonic. But in the just as a functionally, if you want to see, you send the signal at 420 nanometers and you get a blue light. From infrared to blue, you can generate. There are several nowadays, like laser pointers, and some of them are based on the green light, for example, is based on the nonlinear effect. But of course, all these are, efficiency is important here. So you have to apply large pump powers. It is called a pump power. Whatever you are using it to control is called the pump power. You have to apply large pump power to get more nonlinear effects. So for the time being, only that much nonlinear effects. Let us go to one more slide. One more slide, please. So now let us see some integrated optical systems. Application of all whatever we have discussed right now, to fiber optic communications, to optical signal processing, for optical sensors, and so on and so forth. Specific examples only. I'm not telling you it's very generic things, but with this understanding that you have until now, you can think of almost any application. Okay, let us go to communication application. They are very easy to appreciate. Next one, please. Yes, please. So this is an example of a fiber optic communication system. We talked about 4x4 multi-port switches. So you can make a 4x4 switch like this. You have 5 directional coupler switches that you are seeing. They are cascaded and connected like this. So each one can be programmed. You can put high voltage or low voltage for each of them, or you can put them in the crossover state or bar state. Suppose if you put all the elements in the crossover state, what happens? You can see that first port, light at the first port will come at the last port, light at the last port will go to the first port, and so on. You can work out what is the possibility. So one of the challenges here that people have already tackled is how to make port count large. Suppose I want 8 by 8 or 16 by 16. With minimal number of cascading sections, how to make them is an important question. This is a very simple engineering problem. It can be easily worked out. But of course, a lot of other optical difficulties are there, like the junction loss, then extinction ratios, polarization problems. All those things can be handled on the chip. So that is the idea in this 4x4 switch array. One more, please. We have to go faster so that we'll have some time for the discussion in the end. Be a lot more. Almost we are 3/4, less than 3/4. So this is an example of an optical information processing system. So this is just as an example, specific example of a spectrum analyzer. So you are seeing the RF ports. You are seeing a laser diode, but coupled with the chip, and there are 2 lenses that have been put and all that. So you assume that light is propagating from laser diode to the output photodetector array. In between, these RF is used to induce the acoustic wave. If there is an acoustic wave in between the lenses, then it will act as a grating and it will deflect the light. So first lens will try to expand the beam, and the second lens will focus the beam onto the appropriate port. And the deflection will depend on the frequency of the RF signal. For example, 200 megahertz. If you get some, whatever is the wavelength corresponding to that. Grating pitch is important there. So you can calculate, you know, the acoustic velocity, optical velocity, and so on. You can calculate what is the grating pitch and what frequency will be deflected. So this is an example of an optical information processing system. You can use the inputs in different ways. For example, you can modulate the laser diode, or you can modulate the RF signal, and you can find the correlation between these two. All these things can be done. Optical signal processing can be done by using these acousto-optic effect. Okay, let's go one more. So this is a fiber optic gyroscope chip that we made in our lab some time ago. We had a project with RCA Hyderabad where they were trying to make an optical gyroscope. So a typical, this coil, what you are seeing, this is a circle on the right hand side, is the coil of optical fiber. This is we are showing only a schematic, but this is a very big coil, like the size of a tiffin box, you can say 10 centimeters or something like that. So you launch the light in the forward direction and you launch the light in the backward direction, and then interference between those two at the place of this coupler will result in phase shift. The phase shift will correspond to rotation rate, omega. Angular velocity is measured in terms of the phase shift. Okay, so phase shift is, you can say phase shift is proportional to angular velocity is proportional to phase shift. That's how this optical gyroscope is made, and very, very sensitive. Even a few degrees of rotation can be easily sensed by using this fiber optic gyroscope. If you want to make this fiber optic gyroscope, you will require this entire chip. You will require a waveguides, you will require the couplers, you will require a modulator, polarizer, all those things. So all the other components necessary for this gyroscope chip, except for the coil, can be made on the small chip. Of course, laser and photodetector will need active components like gallium arsenide and so on. This can be made on a very simple material like lithium niobate. You can make very efficiently all these components, polarizer, directional coupler, mux, demux, all those things can be made on the small chip. This is an example that we did in our lab. Yes, please. One more. So this is an example of a disk pickup device. So sometimes ago, people are looking at large volume storage, including optical storage. So how do you read and write from? That is an important question. That top portion, what you see, is called a disk. There you have a lot of pits, regions where you have, the information can be stored. So in order to read and write those, we can use the lasing action, and you can focus the light into a specific pit wherever you want. You can detect back. Of course, a lot of signal processing is there after you receive, and you can create this. So this is a disk pickup device. Next one, please. Yes, now we'll talk about some new devices. Until now, we have talked about directional couplers, waveguides, polarizers, and so on and so forth. One of the important problems is these are all very thin and very long. Length is an important problem. We want to have more and more squarish devices. If you want to make use of the chip area effectively, suppose if you are using silicon, then we want to use it effectively. So how do you do that? This is one of the examples. You can make the waveguide in the form of a ring. Whatever you are seeing here in the simulation is a ring. You can light is launched into the input port, and there are 4 ports, 2 input ports, 2 output ports. The backward port, the light is reflected back to the backward port, is very, very sensitive function of the ring. So you can measure the wavelength at which this will resonate. So there are many, many applications. So you can have more configurations also. You can make double ring, triple ring, and you can enhance the properties and all that. So, and once again, I will mention that the frequency, the resonant frequency will depend on the grating pitch. Grating pitch can also be controlled by other means like electro-optic, acoustic-optic, you can control, but not so much. But of course, you'll have to work on each of these specifically to see what is their importance, how much resonance, and all those things. At least rules of thumb will be necessary if you want to understand more specific things. Let us go further. So there are many, many applications of this, starting with quantum communications to delay lines communication, WDM, all those things are there of these ring resonators. Okay, filters you can do. You can make almost whatever you are doing with the directional couplers, you can do with ring resonators. Let us proceed further. Yes, please. Yeah, these are some basics about the ring resonator. You can very easily, that red box, what you can see how it can be solved. You must take the input and output fields, and you introduce the reflection and transmission coefficients, and they solve these equations simultaneously. E1, E2, E3, E4. 4 ports are there. You can write the equation for each of those, and then you can solve. And you get a expression for the transmission, and you expression with the transfer function for the transmission, for the reflection, and so on. Each port you get. So what you are seeing is in the transmission port. So there's a dip wherever it is resonating. Similarly, you can have a peak when if you look at the input port. If you look at the backward port, you will see the peaks instead of dips like this. So these mathematics is very simple. You can easily manipulate with matrices. Okay, let us go, please. Next one. So there are a lot of properties are there, like what is the sharpness of the peak? How sharp it is a filter. Suppose you want to use it as a filter, how sharp it is. What is the free spectral range? What is the maximum frequency with which you can do this? Between the peaks, between the 2 peaks, what is the range? Then you have a quality factor. Any resonance that will have a quality factor, delta F, F by delta F. Central frequency divided by the spectral width. So like that, there are several properties, resonant characteristics, you can call them. And also there's a lifetime. How long, if you are using it for quantum applications, how long does a photon remain in the ring before it can come out or before it can be absorbed? These are all the important properties. We can proceed further. So this is another topic of interest in photonics right now. A lot of people are interested in this, what are called photonic band gap structures. So these are analogous to electronic band gap structures. You know that some of the electronic materials, they have conduction band, valence band. Some regions can propagate, can allow current to pass through, and so many properties you know about the electronic semiconductor crystal. Similarly, you can create these photonic band gap structures by depositing certain regions like this. So for example, in the first one, thin rods are deposited. What you are seeing is top views, all these things. And here you have holes in this third picture 2C, you have holes in the silicon wafer. So when you pass light through these, they will encounter stop and pass bands like valence and conduction bands. So you can use them very effectively for making devices. For example, if you remove one hole, it's a defect. Like in semiconductors, it is called a defect. So the defect will show up in a small line or energy level in the pass band or stop band. So that means it will act as a, only if you launch that particular wavelength, the light will pass through. And similarly, you can make a waveguide. For example, if you remove the entire row, it is called as a line defect. So the line defect can propagate all the frequencies. There is no stop band, pass band characteristics for if you remove that line, but there are certain characteristics anyway. So you can make waveguides by removing the entire lines. You can also make Y bends. You can make 90-degree bends. These are all the things that are possible with photonic band gap structures. One more, please. So you can explain how the band gap is formed by using certain theorems like light propagation characteristics. Okay. So let us go further. Not so critical for you right now to understand further. One more, please. So this is the stop band characteristics of the photonic crystal. The structure is shown here. The rectangular, hexagonal, rectangular photonic crystal, and the stop band, it is designed to operate in the communication band, and its characteristics are defined by the crystal structure, the filling ratio, the dielectric constant values, polarization. These are all the things which will determine the band characteristics of the photonic crystal. Let us move further. So once again, a lot of applications are there. People are thinking about ultra compact photonic ICs using these devices. Further, please. Next one, please. So this is an example of a 4-channel comb filter. So here what you are seeing is line defect. Top one is line defect, and where you are seeing also the light propagation in that. Most of the light is propagating. But I have also shown 4 taps, 4 waveguides which are tapping the light from the bus waveguide. So there are C1, C2, C3, C4. These are point defects which will resonate or let the crystal resonate at those frequencies. So you can tap lambda 1 at one port, lambda 2 at the other port, lambda 3 at the other port, and so on and so forth. So you can make a comb filter by using this. You can see the picture of this transmission characteristics here. All the 4 channels are separated there. You can put the optical fibers at the ports D1, D2, D3, D4, and you can tap the light, and they will contain only those frequencies. Okay, this table will show you further details. What is the Q factor? What is the sharpness of the curve? All those things. Okay. Yes, let us go further. So this is a same example, but 12 channel. So this is a more challenging problem. One of my students has worked on this, so I'm showing you this. Let us go further. So these are the characteristics of that 12 channel comb filter. You can see several lines, and also a bottom chart shows how the reflectivity changes with the refractive index of the defect. Let us go further. So these are spectral variation, sensitivity with the cavity refractive index, and all that different properties. So you can simply say, as a rule of thumb, 1% change in the refractive index will result in 0.5% change in the resolved wavelength. You can resolve very, very sharply. See, you recall in communications, you have 1530 to 1560 is the communication band. Suppose I want to do WDM of 100 channels. Suppose I want to send 100 channels of this band. So what can you say about the spectral width? You require 30 divided by 100. That is 0.3 nanometers should be the spectral width. So how do you form? This is the best way. Photonic crystals is a very good way to generate all those channels, frequencies. Later on, they will be modified, modulated, and all that. Okay, fine. Let us go. So similarly, you can study all these properties. This is also one of my students' work. Then finally, one more example I'll give. New topics. These are all the 3 new topics that I want to introduce. I've talked about the ring resonators. We talked about the photonic band gap structures. Now we'll talk about what are called optical MEMS. MEMS is a hot subject now with mechanical engineers and electronic engineers and in sensors and all these applications. MEMS are playing an important role in all your cell phones. in many of the gadgets, recent gadgets, and in automobiles, you have a lot of MEMS sensors, like acceleration sensors, pressure sensors, chemical sensors. So many are there. So optical MEMS is a subject where you will combine optical devices with mechanical devices. Okay, so you can say that MEMS is a combination of microelectronics, micro-optics, and micromechanics. Okay, that Venn diagram represents, of course, because we are talking about optical devices, I have put the MEMS in the middle. Similarly, you can add biomaterials or biosensors, all those things. Let us see one or two examples. Yes, please. So this is one of the earliest examples called a free space optical bench. People have made all these mirrors and so on a single wafer, silicon wafer. And there can be, see, the first picture, what you are seeing is a full view of the optical switch. So you have a mirror region, you have an actuator to move this mirror and all that. So the second picture will show you how you will use it in the network. On a chip, if you integrate many mirrors like this, they can be positioned such that the light can be deflected into different output ports. You can actuate the mirror or inactuate the mirror so that light will either propagate straight or will reflect. So that way you can make a lot of optical switches. Of course, this is not a very convenient way because there's a mechanical motion involved and port count is less and so many, all these problems we have to overcome. So, but it is possible to make mirrors on a chip. That is what is demonstrated in this. Let us go, please. One more. So these are all the categorization, summary of various types of optical MEMS. Two broad categories are for the power attenuation problems and for the wavelength switching problems. So of course, the first one are more popular now. You are seeing several pictures and you can say that light can be either deflected 90 degrees or goes straight depending on the mirror. So you can once again make a lot of mirrors. You see this other one, you are seeing a lot of mirrors made on a small chip. Hundreds of mirrors, 1000 by 1000 micro mirrors, which also has been made in practice right now. Power control means like biomedical applications and all that, they can be used. Variable optical attenuator is the name of that. Yes, please. So this is a summary of various devices that have been made in optical MEMS technology, starting with the reflective mode devices, diffraction devices, free space optical devices, waveguide based devices, infrared detectors, etc. So many things have been made already in the practice. So it's a very useful subject, hard subject, and many applications. You are seeing in the last column the various applications like X-ray spectrometry, optical interconnects, WDM. These are all the various applications. Biomedical. These are all the applications which you can put these optical MEMS to. Let us go to one more slide. We'll quickly complete in the next few minutes. So this is an example of a optical MEMS pressure sensor that we did in our lab. One of my student, Dr. Patnaik, who is now in BITS Hyderabad, has worked on this subject. Here, what you are seeing is a silicon wafer cross section and 3 layers: orange layer, pink layer, and one more orange layer as the optical layer. So we are making optical waveguides on silicon using the lithography process. You can etch out unnecessary regions and make the interferometer, what you are seeing here on the top. And then on the left hand side, you are seeing there are 2 small waveguides in that cross section you are appearing, transverse cross section. And the waveguide is placed on top of what is called this diaphragm. You etch out from bottom all the silicon, and then this waveguide is laying on this small platform. So if there is a pressure uniformly on top of that, then that will distort. And so there is a change in the pressure. So at the output of the interferometer, you can sense whether there is enough change or not. And this is a very simple example of a pressure sensor. So as I said, this is a work of my student. I'll show you a little bit more mathematics and how to work about all this. Let us go to one more step. So I have finally come to the last step. See here, what you are seeing is the pressure on the x-axis in so many kilopascals or megapascals. And on the y-axis, you have the phase shift in radians, micro radians also you can do. So it is almost as you increase the pressure, then the phase shift is going more and more, negative phase shift, what you can call. So it is acting as a very good pressure sensor. That's in delta phi is given in terms of the phase change only. You can convert it into intensity change. Typically, you can say that the phase shift can be of the order of 100 microradians per kilopascal. That's order of magnitudes you can get it. One more, please. So these are all the various design parameters, because that's one of the student has worked on that. We have all the information. Yes, please. Yeah, design parameters is okay. So that's all I think I have. I have put all these 3 new applications. For those who are interested, you can see there are a lot of standard books now on silicon photonics and so on. There are a lot of special issues of IEEE, JLT, JQE, etc. are available now. And if you are a member of IEEE Photonics Society, you can download some of these papers easily from IEEE website. And a lot of additional benefits are there if you are a member of IEEE. I suppose the organizers will inform you about IEEE as you go along in the all this, whatever your FDP. Okay, so I hope some of you will show more interest and learn more about these photonics and photonic ICs, and then I suppose they will mention. But I would only simply say that you can, if I suppose there are faculty members from other colleges, you can also take part depending on your interest, and then participate in this new subject, you can say. And of course, as our organizers will mention to you, a lot of activity is there in IEEE Bangalore section. At the India level also we have activity, and we would like to contribute more, learn more in this subject. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have questions, I'll take them. If you want
I
a
think,
video,
sir,
I can switch on.
your in detail you have talked about all, starting from the communication to the devices, then MEMS, and then
Yes.
then photonic crystal you covered. So I
Yes.
think one question will be there for the some people who are not decided till now the
Yes.
topic. So what will be the, because our theme of the FDP is recent trend. So
Yes.
what is your opinion? What
Yeah,
is the
that's where I
recent
have
trend?
introduced. You see, there are 3 levels. One is at the device level. I have shown 3 recent devices: photonic band gap structures, ring resonators, and optical MEMS. These are the topics which you can use for research. That is at the device level. At the technology level, we did not talk too much, but silicon is an important technology which you can fabricate in India. You can also fabricate passive devices on glass or lithium niobate. That is at the technology level. Then you have many applications. You have applications to biomedical applications, you have the sensor applications, you have the communication applications, and which we did not touch here, quantum communication applications also are possible. So you can divide your thinking or what you want to do in terms of what is the device you want to work on, what is the technology you will use, what is the application. And in between, if someone wants to do research and publish papers, etc., you have to worry about what is the technique you will use to analyze. All these devices and system level also, you can analyze using many mathematical techniques. And also for the students and the beginners, a lot of software tools are available. You can simulate all these devices very well using the devices. A lot of programs are available on the web also. MATLAB programs also are available. And in our lab also, we have all these things studied. MATLAB programs we can just give you. And all these techniques like the light propagation algorithms and all those things are also available. So these are all the various ways in which you can do. And of course, a lot of new materials are coming up, new applications are coming up. Optoelectronics we have not touched. So many things are there new coming up in photonics right now. If you I would suggest you to be in Karnataka Photonics group or Prakash Bharati group. You will every often you get a lot of information about the recent developments in photonics. And of course, I would once again suggest everyone to join IEEE and benefit. Even if you, even if your application or your purpose is very simple one, it's a very good idea to. Of course, it is costly. Little bit of see the IEEE is a little bit costly, but benefits are very much. I suppose organizers will let you know about the benefits of IEEE during this course of the time. You have 1 week to go around. And if anyone is interested, they can also be in touch with me technically for what we are doing in our lab and other things. Okay, yes. So you should be, the simple answer to your question is the participants should be in touch with the current literature to pick up what can be done. And if you listen to lectures like this, when you read the papers, it will be easy for you to understand. It will not be strange. Yes.
Yes. So any question from the participant side, attendees? Any question? If not, then Crispin ma'am, you can wind up the program with
Those
the
who are
thanks.
doing research, those who are doing research will never get a chance to interact with professor. You can make use of his knowledge. If you have any doubt, you can clarify. Because whenever you say photonics, without T. Srinivas sir, there is nothing. Since the year 2008, I have been with him. He is very knowledgeable person in photonics. If you are doing research based on photonics, any doubts you have, he can help you out. You can have his mail ID, contacts. You can contact him. I have never seen such a down-to-earth person. Your talk was very nice, sir. It was very informative.
Thank you very much for organizing this workshop on photonics. I hope we can get more and more recent developments in future.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Yes, Mittu, you can carry on if there are no questions.
Ma'am, sir, can you share your mail ID in the chat box?
Yeah. Dr. Prita Sharan knows, but anyway, I'll give you. No problem.
Yes.
You tell me, sir. I will type the mail ID.
Yeah, she knows. TSRINU. TSRINU at the rate of IEEE.org is easy to remember. TSRINU.
Yes. I have posted in the chat box.
Yeah.
Mittu, you can carry on.
Ma'am, it's not me. Crispy ma'am is doing, ma'am.
Yeah, Crispin ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to one and all. Myself, Dr. Crispin Gigi, Associate Professor, Department of ECE. On behalf of Children's Education Society, the Oxford College of Engineering, I give a really heartfelt vote of thanks to our Chief Guest Speaker, Dr. T. Srinivas, Professor in ECE Department, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, who spent his busiest time gracing this occasion. Today, we had the wonderful opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this is definitely encouraging us in our future events. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and shown us a new path. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Once again, thank you, sir. So tomorrow morning session, if you could have briefed Crispin ma'am. Crispin ma'am, you're there?
Yes, ma'am. 1 minute.
Yeah, tomorrow morning session, if you can just brief so that it will be easy for the participants to come early.
So tomorrow morning section will start at 11 a.m. Speaker is Dr. Gagan Kumar, Faculty, Indian Institute of Technology, Assam. Topic is terahertz plasmonic guided wave devices. So I request all the participants to join the session at 11 a.m.
Yes. Thank you. Sunita ma'am, you can stop
Yes,
the
ma'am.
recording and end the session. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
ma'am.
Thank you once again.